President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to a special edition of the Can We Please Talk podcast. As always, I'm Mike Leon.
And not eating cats, I'm Nick Saveri.
Or dogs, for that matter. More on that in just a second. A special episode because obviously you were just watching yesterday the debate heard around the world. Maybe it was heard around the world. We're going to find out all of the actual numbers of all of the outlets that were covering this. It was everywhere. Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, first time meeting. Not only debating, first time for them to meet in person. The debate went down on ABC News, moderated by David Muir and Lindsay Davis. Nick and I are going to get into everything that happened in the debate. Nick, we're going right into it because normally you and I, read a little sponsor copy, right? We get a little SeatGeek going, right? We get a little fresh roasted coffee going. No, we're going to need coffee for some of these clips that we're about to play. But I want to start at the beginning here, Nick. Here's what we're going to do here for this format because we covered the last debate. Obviously, with President Biden and former President Trump. We know what that was like. We went back and forth on some clips. This is how we're going to do this one. First thing we're going to do is a little bit of an opening statement from each of us. So like they did with closing statements and they flipped the coin, you won the coin toss. So you've elected to go first here. You're going to go first. You're going to give an opening statement, a little bit about the debate, just a couple of minutes here. I'm putting you on the clock, 2 minutes. Give me a little bit of your opening statement about the debate overall.
I'm stunned. I may not even need 2 minutes. I'll use a sports analogy. So for any of you who remember the Seattle-Denver Super Bowl from a few years back, Russell Wilson, Peyton Manning, on the first drive, Denver ends up screwing up, ball gets snapped way back, ends up being a safety. You think, okay, that was a little odd, but this game's going to balance out. And it never does. That's what I thought about from the moment that the vice president made the comment about crowd size. If you watch, I sound like a sports announcer now. If you listen to her comment about the size of not even the size of the crowd, people leaving his rallies early and his rallies sounding crazy. From that moment on, any coherent thought that Donald Trump had went out the window. It was amazing to me. Like, it's funny. You would have thought I was on the Trump team. And obviously I'm not. But I'm thinking to myself, and I saw a picture of the mic of sort of my talking points here. But like, there's a clear strategy. You could have gone after price gouging. You could have gone after what feels like a really unclear economic plan. You could have gone after Afghanistan, which he did. Perhaps the moment that may have summed up this event best was toward the end. She makes a comment about the economy. She talks about her two pillars of her economic vision, which is this idea of small businesses getting $50,000 and first-time home buyers. I think it was like a $25,000 tax credit or something. So she comes up with these two talking points. The second it goes back to Trump, his response is, she and Tim Walz are going to take your guns. Fight's over. You can just throw the towel in. We're talking about one person who you can question as a politician. It's a track record that warrants questioning. But the other person's out to lunch.
All right. You took way more than 2 minutes there. I should have timed you. I was not timing you there. All right. Let me tell you something. This is similar. You did a Trump right there. I think you were doing an impression of him as you went over. But here was my big takeaways from all of this. Okay. There's a couple of things. First, I did a segment right before the debate on a network with a Democratic strategist. And both of us were in agreement that Donald Trump can do no wrong, quote unquote, in this debate, in air quotes, meaning that we already know what he's going to do. Nick and I could have come on here. We could have easily right before, and we forgot to do this, do a video of what he would say word for word. millions of people are pouring into the country, that the Afghanistan withdrawal is the worst thing that's ever happened in American history. No, it's not. We know that, right? And also some things are subjective, but also some things involved loss of human life, like 9/11, right? Like that's way worse than the withdrawal in Afghanistan. But we knew his script. We knew what he would say. What we didn't know is more about her, more about her shifting the conversation to her policies. I've been saying from the beginning that I felt like her campaign was missing an opportunity by not putting this stuff on their website. They put it on their website, and their candidate went out there, and she solely focused on the American people and not trying to get into a back and forth with him. Again, I want to go back to the beginning of this point. She's the vice president of the United States. She's the number two. For example, Nick Savary is the number two. Nick Savary is the Stugotz. I steered the ship, right? But I still rely on the counsel and advice of Nick Savary. But at the end of the day, we're going to go with what I feel like directionally we should go. And Nick knows that, and Kamala Harris knows that. But now Kamala Harris has a time to shine and explain how she would do things differently from Mike Leon, aka Joe Biden. And I think actually that would work in reverse because Nick is older. But that's basically the point of this. We wanted to learn more about her. I don't know that I learned more about her because I already knew about her. I'm different. I've been following this for a while and I've been in this. I'm wondering if independent voters and people in the middle that are still in this somehow undecided lane felt like they came away learning more about her. That's going to be the conversation and question after all of this. I don't know if it was answered, not saying it in a negative way, just more of, I hope that the takeaway was, hey, I watched this person, a lot of grievances, and we're going to play some of the clips of her saying that. We want to move away from grievances. We want to build the middle class. This is what I want to do for small businesses. It's something that I think a lot of other folks have mentioned to her. Pivot. Whenever he says something, just pivot back, stare at the camera, focus on the American people. And I think she did that. Again, we already know what Donald Trump is. We knew that speech. I've talked to people that have helped him prep for debates. He doesn't prep for debates. That's a real thing. He feels like he's better off the cuff as opposed to going out there and memorizing some things that he wants to hammer home. Some people like that. Some people do that. Whether or not it makes a dent with anybody that's already not going to a Trump rally, we're going to find out, right? So that's my biggest takeaway from all of this. The last point I wanted to make before we actually go into some of the clips, Nick, is on the moderators. I was mentioning this to somebody in a text message, and I put this on LinkedIn as well, not on a post, because if you watch this show, you shouldn't be putting anything on LinkedIn. I put it on a comment to somebody who had posted something on LinkedIn. And I said, moderators, again, the word moderate, right? Like you're moderating a conversation. Those two people are supposed to be going back and forth. You're supposed to be this net neutral party. Like we're not supposed to know that you're even there, except to break things up. It's akin to a referee in boxing. You're not supposed to take over, and I'm not supposed to know who you are, but you are supposed to referee this match and make sure that everything goes smoothly. I think David Muir and Lindsay, I think they did get a little bit overrun at times by Trump when he was muted and he wanted to say something and come in. And I think that's more on Trump, not more on Kamala Harris, right? Like Kamala Harris didn't have many times where she was trying to interject something because it was her turn next. So she would just wait her turn, right? So the moderators, to me, if you want them to fact check everything the candidates say in real time, that's not the point in my opinion, that's not the point of a moderator, but also it's not easy to do. Again, earpiece, microphones, cameras lit, one guy talking while the cameras are muted, right? I got 12 topics we want to get through: climate change, immigration, abortion, the economy, the weaponization of government. We're going all over the place, and it's very tough to fact check that. I know people think it's easy, but it's not. It's easier said than done. So I want to pivot off of that. Those are our opening statements about the debate overall. I thought the debate was a lot better, though. I think, Nick, you would concur, than what we saw on June 28th. Like it went a lot better from a production standpoint, from a candidate's actually, being all there, standpoint. So that was different for sure. Let's go to some of the clips and some of the sound, and Nick and I reacting on some of this, because there were some telling moments in all of this. And I want to go kind of issues orders in terms of like what voters have been talking about and what both of these folks have been talking about on the campaign trail. So let's say a little bit of the back and forth first on the economy front.
Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to startup small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on.
All right. One thing on the economy to note, because there's obviously a lot more from these clips, because they did go back and forth a couple of times as David Muir let each candidate kind of go back and forth on the economic front. There was arguments also about under Trump's economy, and you heard Kamala Harris say at the beginning, leaving us with, some of the worst, since the Great Depression, some things since the Great Depression that haven't been seen. I wanted to kind of fact check some of this stuff first. If you go to factcheck.org, funny enough, which is a project of the Annenberg Public Policy Center, you can see Trump's final numbers, which were statistical indicators of President Trump's 4 years in office. This was posted on my birthday, funny enough, October 8th of 2021. Statistics for the entirety of Donald Trump's time in office, all compiled. The economy, as Trump obviously exits, 2.7 million jobs were lost on his way out. The unemployment rate increased by 1.7 percentage points to 6.4%, which is what Kamala Harris alluded to earlier in terms of the unemployment rate being the worst since the Great Depression. Paychecks grew faster than inflation. Average weekly earnings for all workers were up 8.4% after inflation. Again, this is a summary of the entirety of Donald Trump's time in office, and I encourage people to go read this, factcheck.org. After tax, corporate profits went up and the stock market set new records. S&P 500 index rose 67.8%. Now, again, this article came out in 2021, so it doesn't factor in for the recent stock market setting a new record under the Biden administration. Just something to note real quick. The number of people lacking health insurance rose by 3 million. The federal debt held by the public went up from 14.4 trillion to 21.6 trillion under Trump. There's a bunch of other things on here statistically, not really about economy, but I wanted to read some of the economic stats up front. Excuse me. Nick, I want to pivot to one more clip here before we actually play that, because economy led into the next topic of abortion, women's reproductive rights. Both have been on the campaign trail. I have a huge here in the state of Florida ballot initiative that's happening, in November. That's coming up here. And he was asked about that. He's been asked about that in interviews. ABC News wanted to get some clarification on that. And then Kamala Harris obviously mentioned something in there I want to fact check. So take a listen to the abortion part of this.
Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before. He said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical.
So women's reproductive rights, obviously we've seen it, and the vice president mentions it in the debate about different ballot initiatives in Ohio, in Kansas, all going in favor of Democrats. ABC News also, Lindsay, I know, said there later on in that clip that there is no, on the record, you can go look this up, folks, okay? Google is a beautiful thing at times, that there is no, on the record, hospital where a mother has walked in the 9th month of pregnancy and asked the doctors to kill the child. That doesn't exist. It's not a real medical example. A healthy baby, 9th month, please kill this child. That doesn't exist. So to regurgitate those talking points again is wild to me, this continuous loop. And again, I think moderators are supposed to be independent referees, hit them with statistical data, which I think ABC News did in that regard. There is no on the record case of a perfectly healthy mother having doctors kill a perfectly healthy baby in the 9th month, or even close to the 9th month. Okay. You can look it up. And if you find one, come on back. Can we please talk podcast at gmail.com. Don't worry. We'll wait. Come on back. Email us that example. We're going to do a little bit more of this on the fact checking side with some other clips that we're going to play. But Nick, first to you. Economy, abortion, Kamala Harris. I think, Representative Glenn Ivey was on the show recently talking about he wants the vice president to focus more on cleaning up this economic vision for the future, because he's got to take it out to constituents, in the Maryland area and explain to them, the policies and strategies of what a future administration under Harris-Walz would look like. So I turn to you. We didn't play too much of the economy segment. There was a lot of back and forth. Trump kind of wandered it into the lanes of abortion, and then it eventually got there. Would you make of what you heard first there? Or you can even pivot to the abortion issue, which is, again, Trump talking about people wanted it to go back to the states, which again was not the case. According to polling data, people wanted Roe v. Wade to stay as the settled law of the land. And then obviously Kamala Harris giving her examples here. What'd you make of it all?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the economy, I think this was probably the biggest opportunity that Trump blew, because you and I have talked about even before I feel like the rest of the media got into the price gouging conversation. You and I talked about it on the show, and I was very vocal about it's not sustainable to have a plan to try to cap what people can charge for goods and services. I mean, you can argue maybe it makes sense to do, but I'm just saying in the United States, I don't know how you conceivably do that. Anyway, so there was an opportunity to really hit her on that, and he just didn't. And it was just, I was confused by that. And for all the debate prep, and I know you mentioned, he's known for not preparing, but you'd think someone would have said to him, like, that's a way to go. Not instead, well, she's a Marxist and her dad is a Marxist professor. It's just lazy. Like, that's the thing that was just disappointing for me, in the sense of like, can we have an informed conversation? And we couldn't, because he just took the easy way out. But I think the biggest thing for her is she just kept bringing up the two key points. Because Trump recently, his ads have been talking about no tax on Social Security and no tax on tips. The nice thing about a plan like that, and I'm not saying it's a sustainable one, a good one, whatever, but it's the clarity. And Mike and I talk about this on the show all the time. It's very easy to go to senior citizens and people in service fields and talk about that. And people are going to want to listen. What I thought the vice president did an excellent job is coming back at small businesses, 50,000, first-time homeowners, 20 to 25. I keep getting the number mixed up. Because the thing is, this is what Trump had going for him, is I'm going to give you a couple numbers, or I'm going to give you a couple of things we're going to, do, and we're going to run with it. To the average American voter, that's important. I thought Harris managed to pull it off. I didn't think she would. The abortion thing, it's consistently been a losing issue for Republicans. We've talked about it on the show numerous times. I feel like every time it came up on a referendum, we usually would end up recording shortly thereafter. We talked about Kansas. We've talked about other states that could be quote unquote red, but still, when you put it to a public referendum, and Mike's going to probably see this when it comes up in Florida, it's a loser issue. If Trump had simply said, I sent it to the states, my 6 justices did a great job, and the states are happy. Now, you can refute that because most states didn't want it. And like you said, Mike, the polling data tells us that we never wanted this to be a state's issue. But that's a neutral point. You can live on that. What you can't live on is the fallacy of the 9-month baby is out of the womb, we're going to kill it nonsense. It's never happened. It's a fallacy. And for some bizarre reason, this is what Trump hangs his hat on in the anti-abortion talking point. I'm a pro-choice person. But when a person wants to make a anti-abortion argument, I'm willing to listen. I'm not going to agree with it, but we can have an informed conversation. I can't have an informed conversation with someone who says something so crazy as, well, if you have no restrictions on abortion, they can just kill the fetus, at birth. It never happens.
Right.
So again, this lack of prep and the most out there talking points being what he leads with, I couldn't understand it. And only the most ardent Trump supporter, not even Dick Cheney, not even his daughter, who over the weekend we knew or reported are going to vote for the vice president, would be gullible enough to believe that.
Yeah, well, not reported. I mean, they both said it in statements and recorded videos. But so let me do 2 things here. Well, first off, just to counter what you said there, Trump actually said those things that people did want it to go back to the states. Like you said, the point is that polling data showed nobody wanted it to go back to the states. But he keeps saying that everybody wanted it to go back to the states. Nobody wanted it to go back to the states. I encourage people to go back and watch Justice Amy Coney Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation hearings. That comes up a lot. It comes up with respect to Kamala Harris, specifically in Brett Kavanaugh's Senate confirmation hearing. And she asked him those specific questions. And the questions that they get asked, Justice Alito's confirmation hearing, all the way on down, was around settled law, Roe v. Wade. Would you overturn it? So, and they all lied under oath. Real quick on the economic front. There's no way Nick and I are going to pretend to be economists here. So don't listen to us. Listen to, how those commercials for H&R Block, don't listen to your friend. Listen to a tax professional. So listen to the taxfoundation.org. They did an assessment of Donald Trump's tax plans and ideas. Details and analysis. You can go to taxfoundation.org, type in this article. I want people to do this in real time as you're listening to us. Donald Trump tax plan ideas from taxfoundation.org. Over a 10-year revenue, these top-line preliminary estimates, as they looked at this detailed plan, and they have this methodology that they use to look at the impacts of Trump's proposals in this algorithmic formula that they do, 10-year revenue would lose us $1.325 billion. Our long-run GDP would go down by 0.2 percentage points. Our long-run full-time employment jobs would be negative 387,000. But our long-run wages would be up 0.6%. This is according to the Tax Foundation General Equilibrium Model that was from September 10th, 2024. Our estimate illustrates, this is from their website, that Trump's proposed tariffs threaten to offset the economic benefits of his proposed tax policy changes while falling short of offsetting the tax revenue losses. So Trump's combination, again, this is from their website, Trump's combination of policies could therefore shrink economic output and grow the national debt. I read you the numbers about the national debt rising on his way out in October of 2021 on those final numbers, 14.4 trillion to 21.6 trillion. They estimate this will be even higher. I digress off of that. I want to get into 2 points real quick here from 2 more clips. Nick's first thing is, again, they wandered on a little bit of tangents, but we're going to try to go into voter issues that keep coming up. Immigration, first one. January 6th is not really a voter issue, but the peaceful transfer of power, as David Muir asked him. There's a book over my shoulder of an author who wrote The Peaceful Transfer of Power. That is a step that is always done in this country outside of, a little time in the 1860s. You can go look up what happened there. So this is something that we do. Donald Trump didn't do that. They were asked about this on the debate stage. I want to play the immigration clip first and again to January 6th stuff. We'll react on the other side.
Why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here. But let me just ask you.
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs.
All right. So first off, the elephant in the room. It's raining dogs and cats. What is all of this dogs and cats stuff? Folks, apparently in the ethos of Truth Social, maybe some other shows, I don't even know. I have no idea where this came from. I was yesterday years old learning about this story of local reports of pets being eaten in Springfield, Ohio. There's an article on the local Fox affiliate over there, fox59.com. You can go check this out, where it talks about the internet having this debate over this Ohio town where they're referencing that in Springfield, they're eating the dogs, that immigrants are coming into the town, eating dogs. Elon Musk, I reposted some claims on Monday from a Republican strategist that claimed 20,000 Haitian immigrants had moved into the town and were killing and eating residents' animals. And Musk wrote on X, remember, the guy who's free speech and neutral, vote for, and by the way, sarcasm there, vote for Kamala if you want this to happen to your neighborhood. You heard in the clip there, ABC News' David Muir say that they've spoken with city officials, city manager. There's nothing on record of any of this. J.D. Vance, who grew up an hour away from Springfield, repeated the same allegation on Twitter as well. Apparently, after the Vance tweet, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, obviously a Republican governor, he acknowledged that Springfield had recently received an unprecedented surge of around 15,000 Haitian immigrants. He did not repeat any of these claims about animal abductions or other behavior by migrants. It's been kind of, again, debunked by some of these outlets there on the local level. Springfield Police Division has been corroborating and pushing out information on the city's account, saying they have not received any local reports of pets being stolen or eaten. And this is part of the problem, right? You have to put out a fire started by somebody who just, threw a match over there. And now we're all running to it, but it's just a match that's going out by itself. So, Nick, first and foremost, let's get into the immigration stuff, because they talked a little bit more about the immigration, but it was the same old tired playbook, to quote Kamala Harris. And I've been vocal about the bill that got shot down that Senator Langford was introducing with Chris Murphy of Connecticut, bipartisan compromise. Let's do this. And then it gets shot down. He was asked about that on the debate stage, about doing that. He didn't give the best answer, but this immigration back and forth going on, when, again, I gave you some of the numbers as the Trump administration was on the way out, and they had the benefit, and I hate to use the word benefit, of a global pandemic in terms of the policy that they were able to administer that would keep people in Mexico, because it constituted a global health crisis to have them come here in the U.S. Now the Biden administration has seen steady increases year over year, which is true. And the Border Patrol, their union, they've all said they're overwhelmed. The system's overwhelmed. They're understaffed. They're under-resourced. They need more help. Here's a piece of legislation. Republicans don't advance it forward in either chamber of Congress, so we don't get it passed. That would have hired more people, would have hired more judges, would have dealt with some backlogs of asylum cases, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't hear any of that in his response there. Nuance talking about that bill. Kamala Harris did a little bit of talking about it, but what'd you make of that topic? And then obviously I played the clip about January 6th. What'd you make of these exchanges, dogs and cats coming into a debate? Last debate, it was golf handicaps. What'd you make of it all?
I imagine, and again, I think Trump's team is, still filled with a lot of yes people in the room, and he's not willing to listen to, alternative voices. I think that a golden rule in these events should be: don't say or do something that's going to go viral negatively. So during the debate, I'm taking notes, preparing for this conversation, right? I stopped taking notes the second the phrase eating cats was said, because at that point, I know where we're going. We're going to crazy town. That's where we're heading now. It was just such an unhinged thing to say. And I imagine the sound of people smacking their heads in the Trump prep room must have been extremely loud. It's a silly thing to bring up, because it's so the visual of that is so disturbing and wild that you lose sight of anything else this person said. Think about the whole thing with JD Vance on the couch, and that's all I'm going to say. You folks can all look it up online, what I'm referring to. Whether that's true or not, it's such an absurd visual that immediately you lose sight of the rest of the conversation. And the fact that he walked into that, he volunteered to get into this, is stunning to me. The whole thing with immigration, he brought up immigration very quickly. It was probably the second, I think maybe the first time the mic went to him, and then maybe the second time the mic turned on for him. He went right into it, which was basically the playbook for him of I'm going to keep hitting the racist dog whistle of these brown people are coming to our country and they're going to scare you and they're going to hurt you. And it just simply has been racism. He did it again today, talking about people coming to the country, can't speak the language, maybe don't speak the language. You don't know that. You have no idea of that. Again, he corrected himself, tried to be cute with African-American jobs. Like, he can't help himself. And I think that's where the prep team must just shake their heads. It's like, you can only do so much for this person, but he's going to keep playing the hits. And again, and I can't stress this enough, in the debate with Biden, there was moments where there's like cohesion to what he's saying. But it was because, I guess, Biden seemed so out of it that Trump didn't have to turn the dogs on him. He could just talk because he knew he won. Within moments, we all saw where Biden was mentally and physically during that debate, or at least outwardly speaking. And in this case, he's getting just taken to school and just can't provide sensible commentary. And again, I'm not a Trump supporter, but I walked into this debate. I'm like, there could have been so many ways to hit back, and he chose to do none of it.
Now, we're not the moderators, Nick and I. Like we have the ability to fact check this stuff. And I've cited all these sources that I want people to go out there and look at kind of some of this stuff. I know CNN recently released something, and people are going to roll their eyes hearing CNN, that the false claims made during the debate, Donald Trump made 33 plus false claims during the debate. Again, a few that we've already played clips of from here. Kamala Harris +2 on that false claims that she made during the debate. Again, that measures things that maybe she said from an answer position wise. I'm assuming that some of it is around what she said around fracking back in 2019 when she was running. And obviously they asked her about that question in the Pennsylvania primary. Okay, look, Nick, normally we're gonna go more into this stuff extensively as we would, but I want to put a bow on this here because the final thing was a pivot to David Muir asking the Captain Obvious question about, hey, you said that Kamala Harris was black, but maybe she just turned black. Take a listen to this.
I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, "I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black." I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something, I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm
I
asking.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black.
There is nothing funnier than that clip. I'm sorry. There's nothing funnier. Listen, funny meaning, you know, like kind of in Goodfellas where he says funny how, like here to amuse you. Like there, that clip right there is so bad for him that he doesn't even realize how bad it is for him. But to the people that support him, what they're trying to say, and again, this gets back to what you were saying, Nick, they are losing the message that they want to get out because their messenger is terrible. He's all over the place. As Republican voters have told me in 2 different states, Kamala Harris has kind of danced this line of being biracial. She did a video with Mindy Kaling celebrating her, you know, Indian roots because of her mother, but she's never really brought up, you know, her father and her Jamaican roots, right? Like you've never seen any content around this. This is what voters have told me. This is not me coming from me. I want people to just clarify that for a second. So, and I've mentioned before, as I've said before, it's akin to me being half Puerto Rican, half Cuban, right? Like just because I embrace the majority of my Puerto Rican side, you know, having lived in the Bronx and going to visit family in Puerto Rico because I never went to Cuba and stuff like that. That doesn't mean that I am not Cuban. That doesn't mean that I don't celebrate my dad coming from Havana here and stuff like that. And I live in Miami where there's, you know, obviously such a huge population of Cuban Americans that live here. So you can do both, right? Like you didn't just become something, but they're trying to say that she's using that becoming something for political points to try to win over a particular group. They're wrong, but that's what they're trying to say. He can't get himself to say that because, again, their messenger is wandering off the beaten path. I'll let you put the final bow on it here. This debate, again, it's all subjective in terms of how you feel about this. You may be already, you know, entrenched in your camps. I know Taylor Swift posted something on Instagram with a picture of a cat saying that she'll be voting for Kamala Harris. So people are going to vote for Kamala Harris and how they feel. And some people that may listen to this are already going to vote for Donald Trump in their camp. The question will truly be the people that are trying to learn more about Kamala Harris to dissuade them from staying home in November. That's going to be the issue. Not that they would vote for Donald Trump, but more so that they wouldn't vote for Kamala Harris. Or maybe they would participate in other ballot initiatives that are happening in their state or other down ballot races. That's going to be the issue. And again, I think from this debate, it went better, went smoother. We're going to have the partisan takes all over TV of everybody and digital and who won and who lost. And you're going to see the thumbnails on YouTube saying Kamala crushed Donald Trump with this answer or Trump crushes Harris with this answer in big capital bold letters. But what does my co-host say about putting a final bow on this here? You can go to the race stuff or you can go to the overall debate.
So if we think about this, if we think of the average voter falling into either the 45 or 45 camp, right? Which is kind of where the numbers are bearing out at this point. So there's a question here about the remaining 10% of the voting populace. So where are they after seeing this? And my wondering going into this debate was Trump was picking up apathetic people who were walking away from Joe Biden. Just people who were just really disillusioned by how Biden was turning out, to the point where you really legitimately worry, can this person live through another presidency? So obviously you have the Harris momentum that takes off. So this 10% tonight, I don't see in any way that he gained a single voter. And I think what she may have done is I think she may have assuaged a lot of supporters who wondered about that economic vision, who wondered how is she going to do on the presidential debate stage. Because I think we've talked a lot about, can Trump just not trip over himself? And can he continue to build up the momentum in the debate against Biden? I actually thought he came off fairly well. And that was all just set back today. That's the thing. I keep harping on, and if people didn't listen enough to this show, and shame on you, you should be, you would really think I'm a Trump supporter. By the way, I'm just completely stupefied by his performance. But that's where I keep coming back to. It's my partner will downplay this, but he's in the boxing world and he does a phenomenal job at it. Mike, you've seen this enough. You think going into a fight, both boxers have a strategy and they're just going to execute that strategy. Whoever executes is better and faster, likely to win. But then you see someone in a fight like this who has no strategy and fights in these weird exaggerations that the other person simply just needs to make a couple of jabs and the other person will just trip over themselves. And that's what this seemed to be. She sounded presidential. He sounded crazy.
You make the analogy, and I've made it before, even on a CNN panel right before the Biden Trump debate. Donald Trump comes forward. He's wildly punching. Whether or not we agree with those punches, right, to your point, is a different argument, but he's wildly punching, which is why I argued that Joe Biden had the most to lose in that first debate, because, again, he needs to prove to people that he deserves 4 more years given his age and some of the blunders that they point out. And we saw it all manifest itself on the worst night for him. Now shift to September 10th, ABC News, a different candidate, 22 years younger than Joe Biden, a female, right? The vice president of the United States. And like you said, again, it's subjective, but Donald Trump was wandering on his talking points. And I think, again, if working for a campaign like that, right, where your candidate clearly does not want to read your notes, he does not want to do, and again, he did debate prep. It's just he's not going to sit there and take notes. Like, he's kind of coming off the cuff. That's what he wants to do. He wants to try to do it. The problem is, and Kamala Harris hit on this several different times, is, it's kind of like this Costanza, right? It's the airing of grievances, right? And he continued to do that. And the American people want to hear actual solutions. Now, the retort to it all, Nick, is, did they come away hearing enough from Kamala Harris? Because I don't think the fight is Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. I think the fight is, will I go out to the ballot box and vote for Kamala Harris come November, or do I just stay home? We leave it there. Again, we're going to have some more folks coming on, some strategists that are going to be coming on in the coming weeks as we head to the vice presidential debate that's happening in October. But as always, you can follow our YouTube channel, check out all of the video interviews that we've done with anybody that's been on the show, or segments like the one Nick and I are doing right now. Type in Can We Please Talk Podcast. Hit subscribe. We should pop right up. Audio podcast platforms, you know by now, Apple, Spotify, Google. Shout out to everybody who listens to us over on Good Pods. Shout out to Acast, our hosting platform. Can't do it without them. Can't do it without each and every one of you that tunes in, listens to this program. Keep tuning into this show each week. As always, I'm Mike Leon.
And I'm Nick Saveri.
We'll see everybody next time.